Welcome back to the Dalitalks show. Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. Usually I focus on, several topics, but today I want to really focus on diversity, specifically the culture of Puerto Rico. So my dear friend she's Puerto Rican, Luz Nazario. She's the founder of NEDA's Coquito, and she's going to tell you a little bit about, what Coquito is, a little bit about the culture, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's going to be very free-spirited, and I hope that you really enjoy it. So let's get started. Welcome to the show, Luz. How are you doing?
Hello, my darling friend. This is Luz Nazario, and I happen to be Dali's favorite boricua. She didn't want to tell you that, but I am her favorite boricua.
Man, you're going to have some people fighting me. But you're one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm in the top five. And I'm not number 5 either. So
Luz,
yes,
let's get started with learning about you. Tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? How did you grow up? What are you doing today?
Okay, well, as always, I'm glad to talk. So if anyone that doesn't know me, be ready. I've even given Dali specific instructions to rein me in if I start going too much. But my name is Luz Nazario, and I was born in Santurce, Puerto Rico, and I grew up on the island of St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, which, by the way, if you don't know, it's actually neighbor to Puerto Rico. It's like 45 minutes apart, away on plane. And there's a large concentration of, there's a large boricua, Puerto Rican community on St. Croix. And I was born in Santurce and then grew up on St. Croix, as I said. And I am the youngest of 4 children. And I am coming to you live from the beautiful magic city of Miami, Florida. I got here by way of Pittsburgh, then Philadelphia, right? So I went to study in Pittsburgh. And from Pittsburgh, where I got my bachelor's degree in education and journalism, I traveled across the state of Pennsylvania to Philadelphia, where I continued and I did my master's degree in bilingual, bicultural educations and studies. And while I was there, I really met this handsome guy, also from Puerto Rico. He's a brujo. He's from the city of Guayama, which is to the southeast of Puerto Rico. And that's my husband today, Mr. Denzel Mauras. And we decided to journey down to from Philadelphia to Florida. And I was just sharing with Dali that I am coming back from being on vacation in Boston. And we're talking a little bit about how living up north and so forth. And the one reason why we left was, the main reason was because of the weather. I would get sick all the time. So it was just too much. And we're looking for a place where we could find the Latino community. And we decided on Miami. Plus, we still had family in Puerto Rico. So if we needed to go to the island, it was quick. It was not a major issue, 2 hours max. So we decided on Miami, and we've been here for 20 plus years, Yes, from 97. Okay, so we've been here 25 years, 26. We're going on 26, August 31st. We'll be making 26 years. In Miami, I'm a full-time educator, veteran educator of almost 28 plus years. Wow. And I've been teaching in the public school system. I have 2 kids, adult children. My daughter, Maite, who's 23, and my son, Jeremiah, who's 19. And they are making their way in the world. About 2016, I had a moment in my life, and it was in December. And if anyone knows, and they've probably commented, depends. People take it a different way. But I'm an educator, and we educators, we don't get paid what I think we are due. And I needed to find a way to supplement the income because it was December and there was more month than there was green, there was cash. And it'll be a long time till we got to the next pay period. Well, the thing is that one thing you need to know about me, I love to create things. I like to make things. I like to design things. I reuse and I repurpose things. And I would do different things. In addition, prior to that, I had done some, what is this, multi-level, like I had done Avon, I had done Amway, home interiors, you know, that whole line of, you know, multi-level marketing. That's what it is. I had done that. I do not have a background in business, but I always was struggling with, you know, what do I want to do? I knew I wanted to be in education, but I wanted to be able to do something else. And so I would see people starting their business, but I never really, you know, had my heart into it. And a lot of times it ended up being a waste of time and funds. But this particular time, December 2016, we had really, we had some financial issues because, like I said, it was a long time till the next pay period. I started looking around in the kitchen. My husband and I, initially we had started talking like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And, you know, we couldn't come up with anything. So he went to bed and I stayed awake, and I started thinking, well, you know, since I like to create things and do things, what can I make? What can I do? And I looked around and I saw that I had the ingredients to make coquito. Right now, for those of you that are listening to this for the first time, coquito in Spanish means little coconut, right? In Puerto Rico, coquito is a drink that's normally and typically reserved for the Christmas holidays. And it's made with evaporated milk, condensed milk, coconut milk, rum. It has a whole bunch of spices, and that is coquito. And every family has some variation of it in their recipe. So some recipes are similar, some are don't. Now, what I do need to clarify, my people, because there's you know, people disagree with me. Coquito does not take egg. There's no egg in coquito. That is not coquito. That will be ponche. All right. So in the Caribbean, a lot of people are familiar with ponche, which has basically the same ingredients plus the egg. All right. So let's make that clear. So I had the ingredients for the regular coquito, my grandmother's recipe, my mom's recipe. And I said, well, you know, maybe I can make some coquito. And I started thinking of how I'd seen people like, hey, I'm making coquito, I'll make you a bottle, whatever. And I thought, okay, so do I have any, where am I going to put this? Or since I recycle, I reuse, I had some glass bottles. I said, oh, this will be fine. They were like different sizes. It was so funny. The last season I was at a friend's house and she had one of the first bottles. She had saved one of the first bottles. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's vintage. Anyway, and so, you know, I started to put all that together, and I think I had like about 5-6 bottles or something like that. And I called, you know, I sent a message to my friends and I said, listen, this is what's happening. Would you buy a bottle? And so I think the first bottle, I think it was like $15 a bottle, but this was like the different sizes. And I was, you know, or what could you give? And so, you know, they bought them. They bought them. My friends showed up. I even had one friend just say, I'll bring you my bottle. And she paid me for the ingredients, you know, so that was how that happened. Then the following year, we were talking again, my husband and I said, hey, what do you think about if I bring this back? Sure, go for it. And that's what I did. I did it again. And so, you know, I kept growing and trying different things. When the pandemic hit, and it hit me when in the middle of the coquito season, and I already had orders pending and I had to go into quarantine, I started to freak out because I had orders pending. And even though my family would help me put it together, I did majority of the mixing and, you know, putting everything together. And I was like, they're not gonna know what to do. And with that, I had turned 50 years old, and I said, I got to get this to survive. This is going to become a business, you know. So I felt like so convicted and said, I'm going to make this grow. I'm going to take this to the next level. On top of that, during the pandemic, this is where I met Dali, right? So I met Dali because I think just because we were so closed up and everything, we would have, was it monthly or weekly? I keep going back and forth that it was monthly, but for some reason, I think it was weekly that we had these online meetups, Latina meetup. Was it weekly?
I think that before I joined, it was weekly. And by the time I joined, it had become monthly because Danai was then busy with amigos on Clubhouse.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's how, and that's where I met Dali. And, you know, and if you don't know Danai Escanaverino, she's a Latina you need to know. That's all I'm going to tell you. Look her up. Okay. And, I started reaching out to some of the ladies on Latina Meetup, like, what did you do? How do you do this? One of them was Chef Yadira Stamp. She's a Panameña, she's a chef, and she gave me a lot of advice and tips on how to get started and how to, you know, keep moving this. And then we had Wendy Abdul-Masi, which is also another lady that we met in Latina Meetup. And since she was on social media and Instagram, she would give me all these tips, and on occasion she'd do a giveaway. And so that's how it started to grow. And that's where I said, you know, I'm going to take this baby, this thing, my act of service, my act of part of my love language is acts of service, and I'm going to make this grow. And so that's how, you know, NEDA started growing. And then another great thing that came about was the Clubhouse app. And then Dali and I even connected more there, and I started meeting other people there. And that's where we, you know, we sort of have our online family, I guess, if you could call it, of Amigos Network or Amigos Max. And everybody there just started pouring in and telling me all these things and giving me tips. And, you know, seriously, they were the people that were buying and helping me promote and talk about, you know, the power of, I ask questions, I look for answers, they helped me find the answers, and the networking paid off. And I would have never thought of doing networking. I mean, I heard of networking, and part of me was like, I don't want to talk, but then here's the thing, I love to talk. So, and I guess the whole thing of me loving to talk was the whole concern of being rejected, you know, and that fear of like, will they buy? And that kind of came out of, and as I think now, that's possibly why I didn't really continue with, you know, other businesses of like with Amway and Home Interiors and Avon, because I was like, I'm not going to talk about my stuff. Right. So that was sort of like, I want this to grow, I have to talk. And part of the thing of NEDA's Coquito growing has been because of the networking and the people I've come in contact with. And to me, Coquito is such a unique product. It's unique, but it's common. What do I mean? Anyone, if you live in New York, Brooklyn, the Bronx, you know of Coquito. Hello, right? Where there's a large concentration of gente puertoriqueña, you have Coquito and you know of Coquito. Also in Miami, I'm coming to you from Miami. Chicago, we have also in I want to say Rhode Island, Hartford, and Orlando. There's a large number of Coquito of Puerto Ricans that make Coquito. And so, you know, a lot of the thing has been like, everybody makes Coquito.
Okay, so I have something to say about that, because
okay, go ahead.
That's interesting you say that, because okay, so I grew up in California, so mostly Mexican people, and I'm from Central America, Nicaragüense. And I remember the first time I heard the term Coquito, it was in the Army. I was 19, and a Puerto Rican guy mentioned it in passing because it was like holiday time. And I really, like, I did not really even when he said that, I didn't know what it was until I want to say maybe like 5 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's crazy because I mean, I'm Latina. I've hung out with a lot of Latinos, but even in Puerto Rican,
Mhm.
but they never really, maybe it was because of the military, because we're not supposed to be drinking, in the barracks and stuff, or like, on the base during work hours. But until I met you is when I truly understood what
Mhm.
coquito was.
Right.
And I too thought that coquito was made with egg because all those years, from like that when I was 19, I remember he mentioned something about, there's egg in it and spices. And I was like, oh, and I have heard a lot of people call it like, oh, it's the version of, ¿cómo se llama? What is that drink that,
Ponche?
no, that white people drink,
Eggnog.
yeah, there we go. Eggnog. Your face. But
Bueno.
but I just wanted to point that out because I want people to know that not all Latinos know about other Latino cultures.
Right.
Like it's so different. We're gonna dive into more of that a little bit later. But yeah, I want to hear the rest of your story. Go ahead.
No, so the thing is, like, how do I make mine stand out? Right. So mine is dairy free, egg free, gluten free, and vegan friendly. And so people, oh, it's keto. No, it's not. Oh, it's a vegan type of coquito. You could say that. But the thing is with like I tell people, my coquito is different. One, with the story of how it started. And by the way, you want to know that, make sure you follow me at www.nedascoquito.com. Let me tell you what NEDA stands for, because now as we're talking, NEDAS is no es de abuela. So that means I'm not following grandma's recipe. All right. I can give you grandma's recipe, right? So you make sure you go to my website. I want NEDAS Coquito. I want that recipe. Your grandma's recipe. I'll give you grandma's recipe. Not a problem, because, sharing would be caring. And since it's not following the typical recipe, that's what makes it different. What else makes it different? I offer you La Original, which is a 32-ounce glass bottle with the flip top, which reminds me so much of my grandmother, because she had a lot of those flip top bottles, the glass, the beautiful ones, which I call them like the sexy bottles, because they're just they're classic. Yeah, I know. Dali has shown me, like, I have.
I'm not letting go of those. And when people come over, they're like, "Ooh, can I have this bottle?" No, you can't.
No. Right, exactly. So then what happens now for Dali is Dali doesn't have to order an original. I could just send her coquito in a box, which are the ingredients, right? So that's how we've grown. Now we offer you the ingredients we use with our specific spice blend. Okay, so this is not just any blend that you can get. This is NEDA's blend.
Yeah, and you have the what do you call them? The flights.
Okay, vuelos de coquito. Go ahead.
Let me confess to something. So you sent me that second flight. I didn't share.
Oh no, Henry must have been upset.
Oh, he still doesn't even know. I didn't even mention it.
Oh no.
So if he hears that on this podcast, then he'll know.
Right. He'll be like, good. Yeah. And the thing is, oh my God. And the thing is, well, guys, let me share something with you. Okay. Dali is actually like one of my number one clients, number one customers. Okay. She's been such a great support. And I'll send it to her and she'll be like, no, that wasn't good, Luz. Luz, change that labeling. Yeah, I'm like, okay, Dali. So I take notes, which I think, not to toot the horn, but we need to be teachable, right? We need to be able to accept these things. Or like, you said it had mango. There was no mango in that. Oh, damn. Okay, I'm sorry. Right. So, those are, I think that's what this relationship has fostered, right? Because not only is her support, but I'm getting feedback to help them grow this. So
And
that's where we,
I just want to add though, I didn't just unsolicit or what is it? I didn't just volunteer myself to give the feedback. You did initially ask for it, and I said, okay, I'll always be super honest.
Right.
So don't be mad.
No, and that's
and
the
you
thing.
haven't, you haven't. And I love that about you, because some people ask, and I'll be honest, and they're like,
they're all salty.
Like, no,
right.
I want you to improve. I'm not going to go lie to you because I like you. I'm going to be honest because I like you and I want you to thrive. And I must say that the time that I've known you and watching you grow NEDA's Coquito has been so cool. And you're really good with the flavors. I don't think,
thank you.
I think it was like one that I was like, I don't really taste it in there, but all of them, oh, they're on point. They're so good.
Thank you. No, and the thing, she calls me, right? As soon as it comes in, she'll call me and we'll FaceTime. And she's like, okay, this one is good. This labeling, Luz, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I'm working on it, Dali. Give me a moment. Right. But the thing is, I accept it because, you know, it's helped me get to it keeps me growing. Right. So part of the thing was, Coquito does not have multiple flavors, people. Let me clarify for you. Okay. I am kind of go ahead.
Yeah. Before you continue, I want you to really hear her out, because again, this drink is so like rooted in culture. So for you to even think of doing something different with it is like, oh my gosh. And you have successfully been able to still keep that cultural aspect of it, where people still feel the tie to Puerto Rico, and people like me who are not Puerto Rican learn about Puerto Rico through the drink, and it is so cool. So I mean, you can have the virgin one without the alcohol. Have your kids try it; they will love it. Or, you know, if you're of age to drink, hey, put that rum in it. It is so delicious.
Well, the thing is that I'm a purist in the sense of Coquito does not have egg. Coquito has no other extra flavor. I'll tell you right now. The history of Coquito, a lot of people have different, ¿cómo te digo? A lot of people have different takes on it, but there's just one lady on Instagram, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for her because she is always very accurate with her history. And she's on Instagram as Isla Caribe Tours, and she talks about the history of Coquito. Now, no one really knows the actual first time that there's different reports of when Coquito came about to be. But it was in the early 1900s, maybe I'd even say late 1800s, that Coquito, Puerto Rican Puerto Rico was presented. Right now, let me clarify. In Cuba, we have creme de vie, which is very similar, but it has eggs and some other things in it. And then in La República Dominicana, they have ponche, which you might hear some people say, no, that's Coquito. Okay, but that has egg. All right, now Coquito Puertorriqueño does not have egg, and it does not have any extra flavors, right? Along with that, some people tell you this came about when the gringos, when the Americans, and I am sorry if I offended anybody, but when the gringos invaded Puerto Rico, because then they started bringing in a lot of the canned products, right? And then the whole idea and concept of refrigeration, all right? So that's where you would have the evaporated milk, the condensed milk, you know, all of that stuff coming in to the island of Puerto Rico. So a lot of people will tell you, oh, it started when the gringos came and we need to bow down to them. No, actually, you know, there was another form of it, which some people would even attribute to the French bringing, introducing it on the island, right? So there's no formal documentation of an exact date or an exact person that started Coquito in Puerto Rico, but it has grown to become an island drink, a drink associated with las Navidades en Puerto Rico. All right. And like I said, this lady, she's on Instagram as Isla Caribe Tours. She's very thorough and she provides much more information. I'm giving you an abridged version of what she stated. So with that, again, I told you, I'm a purist. Puerto Rican Coquito from Puerto Rico does not have flavors. All right. So I had people tell me, what about pistachio? What about Nutella? I'm like, even the blasphemy of pumpkin spice.
Oh my gosh.
We forgive them, Lord. We forgive those people. I was like, no, because Coquito does not have all these extra flavors. All right. So I tell you this because through Amigos, we had a lot of people recommending these flavors. And, you know, with my coach, Julie DeLuca Collins, if she sees this, hey, Julie, she brought us together as well. She says, well, you know, we started talking and, you know, why not think about doing it another way? So I decided to do what's called Vuelos de Coquito, Flight of Coquito. Now, the flavors I pick, for me, representation is very important. If I'm telling you I'm Boricua, I want to make sure that if I'm going to have a product that's Puerto Rican, that I am representing what you will find on the island of Puerto Rico, what grows and is harvested in Puerto Rico. So the flavors had to be unique to Puerto Rico, things that grow in Puerto Rico, things that sometimes we do export, all right, but also grows in people's yards, okay? So café puertorriqueño, all right, when I make that flavor for the flight, it's used with yaucono, which is coffee from Puerto Rico. So I'm not using Folgers, I'm not using Maxwell, I'm using coffee from Puerto Rico, which, by the way, every year I go to Puerto Rico and I bring my extra stash. All right, so it is actually Café de Puerto Rico. The next one was piña, pineapple, which also is grown in Puerto Rico. And just so you know, we've had a large group of people from Puerto Rico in the early 1900s move to Hawaii to harvest sugarcane, but also they've helped with, you know, the harvest of piña, of pineapple, right? So you will find people in Hawaii that are of Puerto Rican heritage, okay? So we have café, we have piña. Then the next one was mango, all right? This is the mango of Puerto Rico, all right? And a lot of people go back and forth, but we are Latinos, so we have stresses in words that are different. Like, so for some people say mango, they would think it's the handle of a door, right? And then where we say mango, we could be talking about the fruit, right? So sometimes you'll say like, no, mango is the fruit, mango is the handle. So there's been sometimes that people have a debate, like, how are you pronouncing this?
You just taught me something new, because I didn't know anybody referred to the handle of a door as mango. Because
yeah, coge el mango de la puerta, like take the handle of the door. Wow. Or even like the sleeve of your shirt, el mango de la camisa.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, la manga, sorry, my fault. Manga, right. So it would be the handle, right? So, you know, this whole thing of going back and forth, so it's like, where do you put the stress? But we're talking about the fruit. So let me make sure we got that clear. That grows in Puerto Rico. Then the other thing that grows in Puerto Rico, you know, and I remember this as a child, what's called West Indian almond. Now, this is not your Jordan almond. This is West Indian almond that grows wild in Puerto Rico. And it appears green, and when it's ripe, it turns like a reddish color. And that's the almond I remember us cracking open. And it's not like the teardrop. It's actually a little, it's like a little cylinder. And that's what grows in Puerto Rico. Also, it grows wild. So those 4 initial flavors were very much Puerto Riqueño. They grow in Puerto Rico. Some people, like I said, they harvest them. They, you know, some farms in Puerto Rico, that's what they have. So that was the initial vuelo, the flights of Coquito. And that came about because, again, the networking and the people that I was associating with at the time, which, you know, is kind of like our family from Amigo Max, were asking about these flavors. So that's what you have. Right now we have these three things, which is the 32-ounce bottle, La Original. We have the Coquito in a box, which is where I send you the ingredients, and with our special spice blend, it has no alcohol. So you can experiment with that. Or if you're someone, or you have a family member, you know, someone like, you know, they can't drink alcohol and you want to share it with them, perfect. Then you have that. You just have the ingredients, and you have all the bottles like Dali does, you could serve it in there, right? I've even heard of people wanting, putting it in their coffee, which is delicious. As well as, you know, using tequila, whiskey, brandy. Now, let me clarify something. I am not a drinker. I do not drink alcohol, right? So I've had a lot of people say, but you make this and you don't drink it. My taste testers love it. And that would be my husband and my daughter. They're the ones who tell me it has too much or it has too little. Okay.
Tell them I said thank you so much. Because the amount is just right. It's like, it's got that nice kick. It's not too weak, but it's also not super strong to where like you're like, oh my gosh, I got to take a break from this and then come back to it. Yeah.
Right. I've had people tell me that they get thrown off and they'll have too much, but then they feel it at the end. They're like, oh, wait. There was one gentleman that he drank the whole bottle. He bought 2 bottles and he drank the whole bottle by himself. And he's like, I didn't think it would knock me out.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. And I'm a lightweight. So for me, it's a little strong, but not that strong to where, yeah, if I drink the whole bottle, oh my gosh, I get through halfway the bottle.
We have to pick her up.
Yeah.
But no, but that's, you know, then you have the flights if you want a different flavor. So they're like a 2-ounce bottle. And those are the flights. So as NEDA grows, I was getting a coach, and, you know, Julie DeLuca Collins, she's Latina. Okay. Her dad is of Puerto Rican heritage, and her mom's from Nicaragua or Honduras?
No, actually her dad is Irish,
Italian, right? Okay, right.
And her mom is Salvadoreña, I believe.
Right, yeah. And I think her dad's grandfather or an abuelo is from Puerto Rico or has some Puerto Rican heritage in there. So, you know, this is part of how I think NEDAS has also grown, because like Dali has mentioned, she's Latina, and there's things that she did, you know, we don't know everything about each other's culture, because as Latinos, there's so many differences in what and how we do things, and
even within the country that we come from, there's differences. Yeah,
there's differences in regions and then in dialects.
Food.
So
yeah,
it's amazing. So then the next thing that came about was, what else are you planning to do? I'm like, I don't know. Well, what about some more flavors? I was like, oh, Jesus, Lord. So, you know, I started thinking about it because we both went to a CEO retreat, Dali and I, and as we're talking and sharing everybody there, I was like, oh, I could do Coquito Romántico for February. And that was also based on flavors that you find in Puerto Rico. Right. So one of the flavors that I brought in was chocolate. Cocoa grows in Puerto Rico as well. So we have Chocolate Cortés, which, you know, we share that company or the heritage of Chocolate Cortés with our brothers and sisters from the Dominican Republic. Okay, so that's something else. Plus, we also have our own chocolate companies, chocolatiers, and we have farms that grow cacao, and they sell that in Puerto Rico as well. So I brought some of that back also from Puerto Rico. Then I did pitaya, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
dragon fruit.
Mhm.
And that grows also wild in Puerto Rico. But if you follow me on Instagram at NEDA's Coquito, I mentioned a little bit about a farm that does grow pitaya and sells it at local markets in Puerto Rico. What was the other one, Dali? I had almendra again. I did almond again.
I can't remember because I remember drinking them and they were so good. And I was so surprised that the chocolate one was so good because I was like, I don't know, chocolate. And oh my gosh, it was just delicious. Was it? No, I can't remember what the other one was.
But those almendra was a repeated one.
Yeah.
And those were the flavors that we brought. So for me, the flavors of Puerto Rico, having the flavors of Puerto Rico present in everything I do related to NEDAs, and I need to apologize that I did not write, I have them, so I'll make sure I pull those up. That's very important. So honey, miel,
Oh yeah.
miel de abeja, because we have a lot of apiaries also in Puerto Rico. And those were the things that's important to me, right? So we had chocolate, we had pitaya, and we had miel, and we brought almendra back again. So we have those, and those flavors are Puerto Rican. Those are things you'll find. And that was very important to me because, like I said, I am Puerto Rican born, and even though I was raised in the Virgin Islands, my summers, every summer I was in Puerto Rico, as often as we could get to Puerto Rico. And my parents raised me as a Puerto Rican, which is very important to my parents, which was very important to my parents because of having those cultural traditions, right? Making sure that although we lived someplace else, I would not forget my roots and my heritage, which I know for you, Dali, when you came here, you have shared the story of, your mom making sure that you guys had your heritage, your culture, your traditions. So that is something that you will find in NEDA's Coquito. We honor the heritage of Puerto Rico and our food.
You do it so well. So speaking of you've already taught us a lot about Puerto Rican, but there's some things that I want to kind of like go over so that in case people are listening and they're like, wait, what was that? So in regards to terms, okay, so I'm gonna have some questions. So
I will do my best.
Because the whole point of this podcast episode is to like teach about cultural diversity, specifically Puerto Ricanos. So there's certain words that you use to refer to yourself as a person from Puerto Rico. You mentioned boricua. Now, first question. Now I know this, but I'm going to ask because this was one of my questions when I first heard it. Is boricua a term that's used for male or female or both?
For both. Now, let me tell you where boricua comes from. The original name of Puerto Rico, Juan Ponce de Leon, Christopher Columbus, Cristobal Colon, was Borinquen. And that was the name of the island that the Tainos, the indigenous people of Puerto Rico, had named it. Mm-hmm. It was Borinquen. And that's Boriken, Borinquen. And at the time, that was just what the island was called, and anyone indigenous was called. That was from the island of Boriquen. Mm-hmm. Now, when the Spaniards come to Puerto Rico, it was still called Boriquen, but on their maps, they called it Isla de San Juan. Okay. And it later changed to Puerto Rico. All right. So, the original name is Borinquen, but Boricua is unisex. Mm-hmm. So a male could say, él es boricua, yo soy boricua, ella es boricua. Just understood that is, and I know some people might get on me for this, and I apologize, don't come at me. But, when we say we're boricua, we're talking, we're Puerto Rican, it's almost like a nod. Mm-hmm. I don't know if homage would be the word, mm-hmm. but to our descendencia Taina. right? And so along with that, el boricua, el puertorriqueño en sí, la gente, this also is another point that, and I don't speak too much into it because I'm still learning, not that I'm still learning, but there's always things coming up as we do research and people share what they find. You know, el puertorriqueño en sí, the person from Puerto Rico is what a lot of people would say. And some people take offense, but it's basically 3 races. Okay. Now you might hear the Boricua say, yo tengo negro, yo tengo indio, yo tengo español. Well, not that they're necessarily wrong, because that is what was on the island. First, it was the Tainos and the Spaniards. Now, a lot of people say that Taino died out. No, really, no, there's not. The Tainos did not die out as we think of Tainos, right? Just evolved. So it's that it starts out first with that mix of the Tainos and the Spaniards, right? Then they brought in the people from Africa, right? Los negros de África, que entonces fueron los esclavos, which were then the slaves. And so then you have that mix, right, of three races, right? So the indigenous, el negro africano, y el español, el blanco español, el español blanco. So all of us to some extent have that, some more than others. I really hope nobody comes at me for that, but this is what I know as of today. But the great thing is that there's such a resurgence, or you can find a lot of information of the Tainos, and there's still people who will tell you, no, yo soy Taino, yo soy de herencia taína. So when you see someone that what we would call brown, or se parece indio, y el pelo lacio, their straight hair, that's where, you know, that's where that heritage is coming from. So you could look at like in my family, my oldest sister has blue eyes and very light brown hair, which could be like a dirty blonde, right? Now her mother and my dad parecen más indiado, son más como indiao. They look, you know, they have the skin tone de indio, what we would call brown, and straight black hair, right? Where that genetics, we don't know. We just figured that was like from way back. And then my second sister, ella es más indiada, right? So she's more of the brown tone skin and the straight black hair. My brother has straight hair, green eyes. My sister in the middle, she has brown eyes. And then me, I'm from my dad's second marriage. Well, here you go, right? My mom's family tiene africano, negro africano, and español. And then with my dad, that whole hair. So we could cover literally the spectrum, right? And like we've been hearing in a lot of conversations, the whole issue with colorism that exists in the Latino cultures. I'm sure in Nicaragua there's some variation, right? Que uno dice, you know, like when I first came to the United States was where I met more Latinos, right? So I was familiar con el cubano, el dominicano, el haitiano. I was familiar with those being in Puerto Rico, being in the Virgin Islands. When I came to the US, I met argentinos, chilenos, venezolanos, colombianos, nicaragüense, hondureño. You meet all these people, y mexicano, and then you start seeing, oh, they have the same spectrum we do, right? Because I'm sure, like for me, I had not met un nicaragüense negro till I came to Miami. I was like, adios, right? Because that's not, right? So it exists in Puerto Rico. And I understand sometimes when people say, no, not all Puerto Ricans are black, they shouldn't. And I understand where they're coming from, right? Because we do have that colorism, that whole thing. And that's not something that I can really speak to. I can tell you my experience, but I know a lot of people might come at me and come at you, and we don't want that. So,
and I think that you were so fortunate that you ended up in regions where there was a mix of Latinos, because for me to find another Nicaragüense was extremely rare, because to date, we are less than 1% of the Latino population in the United States.
Wow.
And right now there's a big influx of, a lot of Nicaraguans fleeing because of the political strife that's going on.
Right.
So even if a ton of them keep coming, we're still such a minority, because our country is so tiny compared to so many other countries. Okay, so thank you for that explanation about the Taino Indians, about the races, about like the colorism and the terms. There's a term that I remember the first time you used it, I was like, what was that? You said corillo. And I was like, what the heck is corillo? What is that?
Corillo, mi gente, corillo, ¿cómo están? So it's sort of my group, my posse, right?
Corillo,
so
okay.
Corillo. So it's a corillo, gente, how are you? Talk to your group of people, your posse. That's what corillo means.
What about algarete?
Estás al garete. You are wild off the chain. Estás al garete. Chill. What's wrong with you?
Okay. One that I hear in a lot of songs is mame.
Mame. Now, that depends. Mame is a fruit.
Okay.
Okay. Mame could be a fruit, but depends also on the context that you're using it. Eso es un mame. So it could be like, that's sweet. That's good. Okay. How it's the context that it's used.
Okay. And what is jartera?
Una jartera, muchacha. Me comí un plato de arroz con gandules, lechón, tostones, me jarté de cuajito y un montón de coquito, que es jartera. I'm stuffed. Me jarté. I'm stuffed. And that's J-A-R-T-E, me harté.
Oh, okay. Because
estoy harto.
Okay. So it's just hartarse, like to just like fill up.
Right, fill up.
To stuff yourself.
Sí,
you just use the ha part.
Right. If we say, ve y hártate, like go fill up. If you're like, voy a ir para la playa, voy a gozar. Ve y hártate, disfruta, like fill up.
Okay. And last word, bembe.
Un tremendo bembe, muchacha. Yo fui para la fiesta de Dali en su casa y llevo tremendo bembe. Había música, había comida, right? So bembe is like a great party, right? Almost like it was amazing. Or you can say, mira, hay un tremendo bembe in the terms of like gossip. All right. Eso es tremendo bembe. That's a big problem. So it's also in context.
Yeah, because you know what? When I hear some Puerto Rican songs and, like reggaeton and stuff, I have to go read the lyrics. And then, because I was like, I think I understood most of those words in Spanish, but put together, no. I don't know what's going on.
And it's a context, right? It's the whole context.
I was like, what? Yeah. So if you don't know the context and how it's like the cultural reference, you're totally lost regardless of what country you're from, unless you're from Puerto Rico or no knowledge of it. All right. So switching up a little bit, stereotypes that you'd like to dispel about Puertorriqueños. Because I've heard several, and as I've learned more, I'm like, oh, that's actually not true. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that is true. So you mentioned one, which was Puertorriqueños are black, so that's a stereotype. We know now they Puertorriqueños, like just like any other human being, can come in any shade of skin color.
Exactly.
What's another one?
That we're not citizens.
Oh yeah. That's crazy.
We are citizens. And if anyone's offended, I really apologize. But we were invaded by the United States, General Miles. And that's why we are American citizens. We are one of the last colonies of the United States. So, for example, So the thing is that my son wrestles. He was a wrestler, and this was in Florida. And this is why I tell you, that's one of the reasons why we stay in Miami, because there's a lot of Latinos. He went to wrestle in upstate Florida, and he won the match against un muchachito blanco, a white kid. And he just like celebrated like this. He's like, eh. And this woman came out to him, a Karen, and said, oh, you shouldn't be celebrating like that. Don't you go back to your country? Wow. And he's like, I'm more American than you. Okay. And they just think, they put all of us junto. And no, anyone from Puerto Rico is an American citizen with full rights to come to the United States. Just we cannot vote for the president of the United States, and we pay more taxes than most Americans.
And get less aid.
Get less aid. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, in Puerto Rico, we also have a lot of corruption, just like we do in the United States government.
Yep. All right. The other one. Thank you, man. I want to have a whole conversation about that, but we don't have time right now. But the other question is, do Puertorriqueños speak English?
Yes and no. Okay. It's part of the culture, in the sense that we have a lot of businesses. A lot of people have their own businesses. They have small businesses, and English is the second language of Puerto Rico. Not all of them speak English, even though it's taught in the schools. All right. So yes, you will encounter someone from La Isla here in Miami, up where you're at, that might not speak English. And that is common. That is normal. When you go to Puerto Rico, you come across that as well, but you come across a lot of people that do speak English. So there's a lot of people that have businesses online as well, just digital businesses, that do speak English.
Okay. What are some other stereotypes that you think we should debunk?
One thing that I've seen more of is basically that all Puerto Ricans love all Puerto Ricans. What do I mean by that? If my children who were born here, they have such a love for Puerto Rico, right? My husband and I were both from Puerto Rico. Born in Puerto Rico, my husband was raised in Puerto Rico, but I was raised with Puerto Rican values and visited Puerto Rico often. So we consider ourselves Puertorriqueños. We've taught our kids they're Puertorriqueños, but when they go to Puerto Rico, they're not seen as Puertorriqueños. They're seen as gringos, right? And this is something that happens, that's quite common. And you might see a New Yorican. They'll tell you they're Puerto Rican, but when they go to Puerto Rico, they're not considered Puerto Rican.
Okay, can you explain the term New Yorican?
New Yorican is anyone that's of Puerto Rican descent born in New York, the state of New York, but it typically comes out of the New York City, because there was, in the early 1900s, there were a lot of Puerto Ricans there. Puertorriqueños opened the way for a lot of other Latinos in big cities such as New York, Chicago, Hartford. In Miami, there were a lot of Puertorriqueños that were here before the massive Mariel exodus, and they lived in an area of Miami called Wynwood and Brickell. All right, so a lot of people don't know that the Puertorriqueños were here first in Miami. Just then, when the influx of Cubanos that came over before, that came over in the Mariel exodus, right? Then it exploded there. But there were large businesses, large communities of Puertorriqueño in Miami.
Okay, wow. This is so cool to learn all that history. I was actually just speaking yesterday with somebody regarding homeschooling, and she's Puertorriqueña. And one of the things, and this is just, I'm throwing it out there in case anybody is thinking of homeschooling or is already homeschooling, she made me realize that when you homeschool, here in public school systems, you have to teach about history, US history, government, all that. And when you homeschool, you don't necessarily have to teach just US history. You can teach any history, and it counts for graduation. So anyway, just throwing that out there, because I was like, that is so cool, because in public school, you do find a lot of kids wanting to learn other things, but they can't, because they're like, oh, you have to follow this. Yeah, you have to follow this curriculum, and it limits their knowledge, which I feel like is a disservice to our students in the United States, because there is such a lack of diversity. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because the only way that we can learn about other people's differences as well as our own, because a lot of people don't even recognize their own differences, is by pretty much talking to other people, having conversations like what you and I are having, reading books, watching documentaries that are, accurately depicting the groups of people that they're talking about. And so also through food and drinks, like your Coquito. So I love that one of the things that you do when you send out a flight of Coquito or the bottles is that you include a little card with a little bit of history.
Yeah.
I love that. And I mean, just the way you package it, I'm telling you, everything that Luz does is telling the story of Puerto Rico. The box, how it comes in with the type of the stuff that you put in there,
the filler.
Filler. It's a Latin American thing. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is so cool.
But it goes back to the whole thing of me believing in recycling, repurposing.
That too. Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think that's also something that's very Latino of us, that we use our plastic bags, we recycle those things.
Oh yeah.
And those plastic containers, they become our Tupperware. Hello.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, my kids kind of make fun of me todavía, because they're like, oh my gosh, they were watching one of those meme things on Instagram about like a Latina mom, like you have a Latina mom if she does this, and there's like she's taking like pots and pans out of the stove, and she's like using that
right here.
Yeah, she's using the grocery bag as a wastebasket bag. I'm like, heck yeah, why am I gonna
exactly,
why not? I don't need no fancy little bag. I mean, if it's in my room, I mean, no importa, the guest room might have something nicer. But all of these things that I think Latinos do not get credit for. I mean, recycling is not a new thing. It's something that a lot of Latinos and even people from other countries have been doing.
Yeah.
And we see it as like part of our culture, and we're very proud of it. Whereas some people are like, oh, you should be embarrassed to still be using that butter container as your Tupperware. Like, no,
it's just
no, it's efficient, it's saving money,
and you know what, we're helping our kids. We are helping our kids with deduction. Why? Because they have to deduce which one actually has the butter.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh my gosh, my mom was so big. We had so many of the round butter ones.
Yeah, was it country? Is it country butter?
Crock?
Country, country crock,
Oh my God, I still remember. And now I remember, I was like, okay, esta tiene arroz y frijoles, this one has the yuca, this one. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to go through so many to find what I was looking for.
Exactly. Or you say the brown container, like, which one?
Right. And it's not even a matter of like unaffordability. It's just like
practicality.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got it. I might as well reuse it. I paid something for the butter I'm going to get. And
I mean, now I know it's changing, because we're finding out all this plastic containers has toxins in our food and stuff. So we're switching to glass. That's all another talk. But yeah, we still do it for the most part.
We still do it in Puerto Rico. They still do it. One thing before we end, I do want to let people know about Puerto Rico. We are very proud of our people and the representation. We are very proud of Benito Acosta Ocasio, right? If you don't know, that's Bad Bunny. We're very proud of Jennifer Lopez, even though she is a New Yorker, but she'll tell you she's Puerto Rican. But what I do want to point out to people is Benito is just a fragment of the entertainment industry in Puerto Rico. Okay, we have classical musicians, we have ballad composers, we have a myriad of entertainers in different genres. Okay, so let me make clear that Benito is not the all-encompassing boricua. All right, and not all boricuas listen to reggaeton. We have salsa, right? And that's another story where salsa came from. Pero bueno, I want people to understand that Benito is just our current representation, but we have many more celebrities, many more artists that represent Puerto Rico. And just recently, our first Miss Universe, Marisol Malaret, died. She passed she was Miss Universe in 1970. So she was the first Miss Puerto Rico to become Miss Universe. So we have so many, I encourage people to look past Benito. Benito is just what we know now, and we're proud of him for all his, how he represents us and how he unapologetically represents Puerto Rico, and he does not feel he needs to give up speaking Spanish, and I'm right there with him. And si ustedes no lo sabían, I believe in Spanglish because that's just who I am. And he is in a sense of representation of who we are, that small island, 100 por 35, which is 100 by 35, 100 miles by 35 miles. That little island has created so much talent. And we have so many people in representation. We just had the World Series, Baseball World Series. We did not make it to the final, but we did put up a fight. We were called Team Rubio. And then we have Serie del Caribe coming up. We have many athletes as well. We have Monica Pui. We have Tito Trinidad. We have so many. So I need for people to know that besides Benito, who's doing such a good job representing La Isla de Puerto Rico, we have other people that represent. You just got to go find them. They're there.
Yeah. Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do all Puerto Ricans speak Spanish?
We did that.
We did?
No, yes, actually. I'm messing with you.
We did the English one.
Yeah.
Or should I say, do all New Yorkers speak Spanish?
Oh, you say I cannot speak to that. But we do feel I'm not New Yorican, but most Puerto Ricans do speak Spanish. And how do I say, if you talk to a New Yorican, he will do his best to speak to you in Spanish, and he will have Spanish words, like algarete, está altao, tiene una tremenda jartera, está ñongatao, está salvaje, está bestial, está brutal, he will, the New Yorican would season their English, their language with words in Spanish, because that's just who we are. We're so proud to be Puerto Rican.
Yeah. And I love the Puerto Rican culture. I think it's like just vibrant. And I can relate to some of the things because it reminds me of my Nicaragüense culture. The loudness, the fiestas,
Well, we are connected. I need you to know.
Yeah.
How are we connected? Because Roberto Clemente, in the early 1970, there was a huge earthquake, 1971, I want to say, a huge earthquake in Nicaragua. And Roberto Clemente, one thing Puerto Rico does, Puerto Rico will help anyone, any country. And we do these massive drives. And when Nicaragua was hit by this earthquake, Puerto Rico did a massive drive collection, una recolecta bien grande. Roberto Clemente led that charge. He was on the plane that was taking over that relief. That plane crashed.
Is he the baseball
player? Pittsburgh Pirates, número 21.
Wow, I didn't know that. And I know of this famoso earthquake because I remember my father describing it as the earth looked like a blanket being waved.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
So that's one of the connections that Puerto Rico and Nicaragua has. Our pride and joy led the charge to deliver all of these, all of these things for the drive, relief aid. and he lost his life in the process.
Really? Oh my
Yeah, the
gosh. Now I
plane
have to go
crashed.
read. Oh my gosh, I have to go read about this now. I had no idea because I've heard of this earthquake for years and how it really changed Nicaragua's economy forever. I mean, they still have not, because they used to have like
Recuperated.
skyscraper, like those skyscraper buildings. They had like
Yeah.
a real city, and I last.
But also remember, I don't know if you remember Prisca Dorcas. And in her book, she talks about how a lot of the change came about because then also, the government.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow, we could continue talking for hours, Luz. But we're gonna stop here because we know people have other things to do, and we do too. So I just want to thank you so much for putting all of your heart and soul, culture, and just dedication into your Coquito, NEDA's Coquito. And I just hope that everybody listening goes and checks you out, NEDA's Coquito on Instagram, and nedascoquito.com, and check out your drinks, that they buy them. And let me say, people, you can buy year round. I mean, if we order enough, we can keep her busy year round.
Yes, and the thing is, I'm doing it year round now, so it's not so long. I was waiting. You have to wait till the season,
right? Because I remember the first time when I met you, I was like, oh man, it's only during the holidays. Because I mean, I'm not Puerto Rican or anything, and I love the drink, but I'll drink it year round. Why not? And you're doing it, so thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, Mama, thank you. No, you know that if you call and I can help you, I will show up, girl.
I know. Oh, I wish I could hug you right now.
Virtual hug.
Okay. Any last words before we go?
No, thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure you not only follow Dali, you follow me at NEDA's Coquito on Instagram. And what else can I share with you? I'm available. You want to hear more from me? You want to know about Coquito, Puerto Rico? I'm right here. So thank you so much. And make sure you support my girl, Dalitalks.
Oh, thank you. Bye, Luz.
All right, Mama. Bye.
Hey, did you like that episode? If you did, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you may be listening and write a review. If you want more tips or some behind-the-scenes videos, make sure to follow my mom at Dalitalks on Instagram. You can turn on notifications for her posts and stories as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. See you next time.